Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Connections. Today, I'm super excited to have my friend Julie Mae Hales here with us. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Natasha. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Good,
It's
good. I
very
have my
fun.
furry friend with me, so if
Oh,
you
can
see
you
her
show her,
pop
please?
up, yeah, you say hi, Mel. This is
Hello.
Melody, and
Very nice to meet
yeah.
you, Melody.
Oh,
I see. Oh,
sorry.
I love it. She's a diva. She's starting us off like her diva moment. She's out. Okay.
Yeah. Uh, she's
Well,
like, "Mommy, pet me." I'm like, "I'm sorry."
what people may not know is that you and I send each other quite a lot of voice messages. So it's fun that we'll be able to now spend some time really getting to know more about your music as well with all our listeners today.
Yeah, it's been so fun to talk with you, for sure. Yeah, it's been great, especially during lockdown.
I know. What an interesting time it's been. So now, Julie, I remember, I think the first time we came in contact was you had written my sister and I on our page, and you invited us to this wonderful group you'd created. And then, of course, I discovered you are a singer and you have a wonderful album called Light a Candle Out. So let's go back to when you started singing. Do you remember how old you were when you first started singing?
So I've been singing since I could talk.
Okay.
A very, very long time. My parents were worried about taking lessons, so they made me wait until I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And so while I was waiting, I learned to play flute, but as soon as I could take voice lessons, I kind of threw it out the window and pursued vocal lessons. Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I took flute also. So did you find it helped your breathing at all, or was it a different thing once you started singing?
I think it helped with like reading music. I think that was a big thing. I don't know so much about breathing
Yeah, because it's slightly different just in
because
the
it's a little different.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's tell. So during that time, your parents obviously, I guess, wanted to protect your voice. So that's why they didn't want to
Uh-huh.
start your
Yeah.
lessons early. But were you still singing at home? Who were you singing to at home?
I've always been singing. So I always, so my parents, they would always play like a lot of different types of music. So I grew up listening to Phantom of the Opera.
Mhm.
I listened to classical music, country music, basically everything. But the big soundtrack that they used to play was like Cats and Phantom over and over again. So that was probably one of my favorites was just those soundtracks. And but yeah, music has always been playing constantly. Like my parents, when they would go on a date, they would go and buy a CD, and that was their date. So they have over 1,000 CDs now.
Wow.
So lots of different types of music, and then plus all of my siblings play. So I have three brothers and a sister. So two of my brothers and my sister took classical piano lessons from a
Nice.
Ukrainian teacher, so hardcore classical.
Yeah.
And so did my dad, and then my one brother plays the oboe. But I think I'm the only one who decided to do it more professionally than the rest of them.
Well, that's super cool. So do you guys
Yeah.
ever just sit together as a family and make music?
Yeah, like my dad will play hymns and then we'll all sing together, or my brother will come over and he'll play a lot of different types of music, mostly like classical and stuff, which is fun. And then my sister sings a little bit as well, and she's a really beautiful pianist, and she likes to create music on the piano, and so does my dad. So, um, which is really fun.
Oh, that's great. So you have like the perfect musical background with your family. So then tell us about your first voice teacher when you finally got to take those lessons.
So my first voice teacher I wasn't with for very long. My parents like to try and find the best teachers, but they wanted to find someone locally, and I grew up in a very small town called Vernonia and called it for nowhere because it's literally in the middle of nowhere. It was like I lived in Oregon, and so if you know Oregon, it was an hour from Cannon Beach and an hour from Portland. So it was yeah. Um, so we did one lesson, and I think her name was Ellen, and so I took from her for maybe a few months. And then after that, I took from another teacher. But when you work with teachers, you have to be really careful to make sure they're teaching you right technique. And this teacher didn't. And so I have like two teachers that have really shaped me as an artist. So the first one that I consider like my, like the best teacher that I've had, or one of them, his name was Todd Kaufman, and he had a master's degree from Juilliard, and he was on Broadway for 29 years. So he did a lot of Broadway music with me, which was a lot of fun. And he's just an amazing person. He's actually still alive today. I think he's in his 90s now.
Wow.
And he was friends with like Sondheim and Andrew Lloyd Webber and just all the greats. And Judy Garland actually lived with him and his wife for 2 years before she went to England. And so he has literally like this picture of Judy Garland, and every year Liza Minnelli like calls him and is like, "Are you dead yet?" So I can take the picture. And how you know if he thinks that you are going somewhere is he puts your picture on his wall because he has all these different pictures of all these very famous artists. So it's always fun to see your picture on the wall.
That is super cool. He must have had some good stories. So, what are some of the things you learned from him?
I think the biggest thing was I'm very shy. So for me, it was like singing with, more a loud voice. So being able to, so basically on Broadway, they told him he was like leather lungs. So they never gave him a mic. So he trained me to be the same way. So I don't
Wow.
usually use a mic when when I perform and stuff. Um, and then also just, like telling the story and just really building up my confidence as a singer because I was bullied a ton in choirs. And so he kind of helped me like be okay with my big voice.
Well, let's talk about your voice a little bit because you did mention that some voices don't necessarily, they're not meant to blend in. They're meant to really stand out. And you have a very unique voice type. You are a dramatic coloratura. Is that right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that type and some of the famous singers that also share your same voice type.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, either your chords are thick or they can move. Mine do both. And so basically what that means is you've probably heard of a coloratura, and coloraturas are the highest sopranos, but a dramatic coloratura is also a very same. We can hit the same notes. Like I think I have about 5 or 6 notes above high C. Yeah. And so we can sing, those high notes, but I think what makes us different is we have more of a dramatic sound
Mhm.
where we have a lot of power behind our instrument, and so it's kind of hard to capture. And then famous singers with that same voice type would be Maria Callas and Joan Sutherland. So, and I think, I don't know, I call my voice like the three-headed dragon because it's so hard to control. I've been training it for over 20 years now. And it's just, one of those instruments that I think just takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And I think it's important for me, especially to just keep training because it's such a big voice. There's things that you sometimes don't hear, and so my teacher corrects those things. And then, like working on things like having like the shimmer up above in the high register and having it, sound the best that it can be. I feel like it will take me a lifetime to master my instrument. Like, yeah, and every year it just gets better and better, which is nice. It's also kind of like, oh, I wish it kind of stayed the same in some ways, because then you'd feel like um, you made it. But I guess, guess that's not the case with my type of voice type, and maybe that's the same with other people as well, with other voice types. But
Well, what I've
it's definitely
heard,
big. Like I remember,
yeah.
like in the beginning, because I didn't realize what I was until I started with my teacher after Todd, and she's an opera coach, and she was basically like, "This is what it is, and this is like, what you can do with it and stuff," which is really fun. Um,
Yeah, no,
yeah.
from what I've heard, the dramatic voice, it's like it takes a little longer to mature than others. So maybe a coloratura, you see them winning competitions in their early 20s. And for the more dramatic, it takes a little longer. But if you have that huge voice, and like you mentioned, that shimmer, and we were talking about it just before, you have a gorgeous shimmer to your
Oh,
voice with the
thank you.
vibrato. So obviously, you've done a lot of hard work. You're going to keep working on this very special instrument. Yeah.
Yeah, still a lot of work to go, I think.
But I think that's true of everybody, but like you're saying, just because your voice is so big, it just like,
Yeah, I remember when I was younger, or even a few years ago, like my voice was so big that if I wasn't physically in shape, my whole frame would shake because of the sound
wow.
it made. Yeah. So, yeah.
So you can fill pretty much a good size hall just with your voice.
Yeah, definitely. One of my favorite songs to sing during Christmas time is "Oh Holy Night"
Mm.
without a mic because it is so much fun to use so much power in that song. Like, just going forte is just the greatest thing.
Have you ever broken anything, Julie, when you were singing?
No,
Okay,
no, I
not
haven't
yet.
broken anything yet, but I'm sure, I'm sure it's in my future.
You
My
might have
dad's
to get
always
your
teasing
glass.
me, "Don't break the window."
Yeah, we might have to do a little something where you have to get different kinds of glasses and then you do that would be a fun YouTube
Oh yeah,
video.
I've seen it. I think it's something like with the frequency of the
Yeah,
voice. So I'm sure if I knew what frequency to hit, I could do.
that's
That
super
might be a
cool.
cool YouTube video.
Yes,
Let's break glass
absolutely.
today.
So tell us a little bit about your first album. Now, this actually started when you sang for your grandmother's funeral, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think my parents were pretty practical. They were just like, we don't necessarily want you to pursue music as a career because, there's a lot of competition and, there's a lot of heartache with it. And so for me, for me, I actually went to nanny school. I'm considered like the modern day Mary Poppins. And so for me, it wasn't until my grandmother's funeral. Like I'd always trained. Like I planned on just training and training until the end of time, basically. Like that was never going to change. And I worked super hard with that training. But I think with my grandmother's funeral, I'll never forget. It was like there was a ton of people who came, and it was I don't even know how I got through that song because I was crying. Like I had tears like streaming
I
down my
bet.
face, and I just remember singing that song, and when I was done, everyone was crying. And then a ton of people came up to me and was like, "You really should do something with this." And so that was, I think, what I needed to actually finally do something with it
Mhm.
besides just train and practice a ton. Um, so that's kind of where it started with the album. And then, yeah. And that song was Going Home, which is actually on my record. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful
Oh, it's
song.
a beautiful message. Um, and so your album, Light a Candle, and kind of your whole thing as an artist, you always say light and love, right? So tell us a little
Yeah,
bit
Love
what
and
that
Light.
means. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember I've done a lot of like marketing stuff. Like I love taking classes and learning as much as I can about marketing. And one of the things it was talking about how you should do like fan club, and it was like, well, I don't want to use my name, so what can I do? So I was praying about it, and it came, you should say love and light. And I'm like, oh, so now it's just become my thing where I just always sign everything off as like sending you love and light or love and light. So that's been part of, and I think my music kind of encompasses love and light. I think a lot of it, yeah. So that's
Very
why I've always
inspirational.
used
Yeah.
that since getting that answer and just being like, okay, because I think, I'm sure for you too, I think when you come from a very spiritual and religious background, I think it's hard to share. I mean, to share your talent. I mean, yeah, I mean, like singing in church, but I think it just gave me that permission to
Mm.
sing like outside of that and to be able to like give that message of love and light. And, that's what I hope my music does for people is that it does bring them love and light.
So tell us a little bit about making your album. I was just checking before the interview, and your song Pirate Ships has something like 29,000 streams on Spotify now.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I did approach a ton of Spotify playlists though to get it onto these Spotify playlists. But yeah, I mean, I just feel so grateful. My producer was amazing, and he came up with a harp arrangement, and then the harpist, her name's Sophie, and she just did an incredible job with that. It's actually one of my favorite songs to sing, just because of the beautiful arrangement of the harp.
And that was an original song you wrote, is that right?
No, so it's actually from Judy Collins,
Oh,
if you know
okay.
who that is. Yeah, yeah. So that was one of her songs, but it's not done very. much. I think I'm
Yeah.
the only one who's covered it besides her and the original artist. But for me, that song, like I said, I'm like the modern day Mary Poppins. So that's my goodbye song. Like that's the song I connect with because I feel like the pirate ships are taking away all the time away from the children that I've
Mm.
nannied in the past, gosh, 13 years. So I really relate to that song. Like it's like, it's that lullaby. Like I love lullabies, and so I thought that was a very haunting, beautiful lullaby that kind of expresses how I feel when I say goodbye to my charges.
Wow, that is very special that you have that connection. And tell us about, so you did start writing your own songs, and Wanted is one of those songs. And that's, beautiful message. And I know you always are posting for Suicide Prevention Week. So tell us a little bit what that means to you and how you started songwriting.
Yeah, so Wanted was interesting. So I remember getting a phone call from my mom, and I heard that one of my acquaintance friends had passed away from suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And so I immediately grabbed a pen and just started writing. And I wrote Wanted, and I wrote it within 2 hours. There were no changes except my teacher was like, maybe have You Are Loved a Million Times at the end, but it all just came together in that 2 hours. And it's pretty emotional for me, like, because it brought back all the emotions of other people who I've lost through suicide and also my friends who have lost very close members through suicide. So I think it's just, I think it's just so hard. I mean, this life is so hard. Why be mean to someone? And I just wanted people to feel that they're loved and that they're wanted. I think that's just such a beautiful message. And I don't know if we hear that very often in our society as much as I think we should. Um, let's see, and how I started writing. So I've always written poems, and then my teacher encouraged me to like actually write songs. And my second song is actually pretty emotional. So most of the songs that ended up on the album that I've written come from pretty emotional places, and this one in particular. So as I was writing the song, two of my best friends, their dads were diagnosed with cancer, and then my dad was diagnosed with cancer, um, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a song about this, which which is always hard, and that's where Light a Candle came from, and how, and at first I didn't want to end the song. I was like, there's no way I want to end the song, because it ends in death, and I don't want that to happen to my dad. And my best friend shared with me that her dad would always call her at the top of the mountain to make sure that they were okay, and her dad ended up passing. And she shared with me that the first time that they went up to that mountain pass since his passing, they were in this dark, dark storm, and all of a sudden they saw the most beautiful rainbow. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's how I'm gonna end my song. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. So your songwriting, it's very connected to your life. And
yeah, very
yeah.
much so. Yeah.
So you put together this beautiful album, Light a Candle. And I know there's always as singers, we always feel like, oh, I want to keep working on. But I think you told me your producer gave you some good advice.
Yeah, he was basically like, it's gonna get better next year, but you just need to release it. You just need to release art, otherwise no one's ever gonna hear it. And I think that was good for me because I was just like, because um, for me, it took me 7 years to make this album. And part of it is making an album is so expensive.
Yes.
It is so expensive to make a record, to get those backing tracks that you feel good about. I mean, I was really blessed with my producer. And I mean, he overdubbed like the violin and the cello and made it sound like a full orchestra. And he actually wrote all the arrangements for every song on the album.
Wow.
And then my voice teacher. So basically, how I write, I don't play piano. I probably should learn. But I basically take my phone and I just come up with a melody and a chorus and a bridge and then the lyrics. And then I take it to my voice teacher and, like, you know, and then she comes up for the arrangement and then they'll play it on top of that. So that's kind of how those songs came to life.
That's so cool. Well, I mean, I think there's no right way to write a song, right? Because people think of doing it at the piano, but I mean, it comes to you. If it comes to you, the melody and the lyrics, that's just as good, you know? It's just like whatever way works for you. So tell us about this other teacher then, because you've mentioned her a couple times.
Yeah, so her name was Jordan Carbon, and she's amazing. She, yeah, I mean, she's really trained my voice. Like, she's really helped me become, like, really, feel comfortable being a dramatic writer. She's, I mean, she's such an amazing teacher. Like, she makes me laugh half the lesson
You need that.
with some of the stuff that, a lot of singers, I mean, if you talk to a lot of singers, some of those exercises are just hilarious. Um, yeah, and she's like big on like supporting your sound and how it comes deeper than what I think most people realize, and how your rib cage is completely expanded and how your stomach is completely out, and there's just I think a lot. But what's great about her, she shares examples on how to do things, and she's very scientific. So she knows like the latest science. She's always going to the latest seminars. So she's amazing. So if you're looking for a voice teacher, go check her out because she's amazing.
Well, I'm sure Julie, you'll give her give me her information and we'll share it on there up on the screen as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So tell
Definitely.
us now, you've obviously, you have this classical training. You also did a bit of Broadway training, and you've been last couple, well, I guess 7 years, you've really been a classical crossover artist. So how, like, what are the new areas you want to explore?
Yeah, so I guess since we're going into that, it's kind of scary to admit it, but I've started working on my second album, which is really scary because it took me 7 years for the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one, I'm just writing. So I'm just spending like I don't know, like the rest of this year and probably some of next year just writing and seeing what I come up with. But one of the places that I've really enjoyed dabbling is actually fantasy music. So just kind of like telling stories, like one song that I shared with my fans, which was crazy. It got over like 200 likes, like really fast. It was crazy, and it was basically like The Little Mermaid, just like a version of The Little Mermaid. And I think it's so fun because I think as a musician, sometimes we get stuck on being perfect. And I think what's so freeing about writing is there's not as many rules when it
Mm,
comes to writing. Like you can kind of be the character. And I think for me, it's just so freeing to just write, stories about different characters. So, um, yeah, so that's kind of where I'm headed with it. Like it could change, but I think basically I want to create another album like Pirate Ships. Like that's kind of my inspiration is to create a song that people just want to listen to over and over again. And I think it's probably because of the story and then also like stripping it back and doing more like harp on the next record.
mm, I like that idea.
So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So yeah, once again, kind of scary to admit that. And I have no idea when it's going to be done. I mean, once again, it's like I'm doing the free part, the free of just writing, and then when you take it into studio, then you have to figure out how to pay for it and stuff. So that's kind of well, yeah, but next year I hope to hope to release some singles next year from it. And yeah, so I'm really excited about that, and I've just been listening to a ton of just fantasy inspired music, like um, film music, and just all these artists who are creating
Mm,
this amazing music. Like what's nice about fantasy is you have so many different types of voices. So even if you have a big voice, you still kind of fit.
there's no
Where I
right or
think
wrong
with
kind of thing.
crossover, I kind of had to take my voice and go like this. Or with fantasy, I'll be able to go like this. So I'm looking forward to kind of breaking out a little bit more and showing a little bit more what my voice can do, I guess.
Yeah, I think that'll be awesome. Oh, hope there's not a big pop there, but like you're saying, really, because soundtracks, when you think about it, they can be for any emotion, so it's like there is a lot of freedom for what you can bring to that. So that's really exciting. And the Little Mermaid song, I heard a little bit of that clip. That sounds awesome. So
Yeah, I'm just having a lot of fun with like songwriting and just trying different things. I think the last 7 years I was so focused on making a crossover album that now I'm just like, okay, well, what else can I do? Like I'm exploring. Like I feel like it's still keeping the elements of crossover, but it's kind of expanding it
Hmm.
a little bit more. And then it also, I mean, once again, just being able to write within that and creating songs that are, that I hope are good, that kind of go in with like Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones or just those type of songs that you just want to listen to. I mean, another song that I've loved listening to recently is Daughter of the Sea, which is so fun
Oh,
because
what's that from?
here it's actually called from like War of Worldcraft, I think,
Okay, yeah,
the game. But they have really cool music. I don't play, but my brothers do.
yeah. Okay.
Um,
So you
and my
hear it from
sister.
the other room calling to you.
Actually, no, I just discovered it randomly on YouTube. But it's really cool because at first you think that this is this sweet person singing this song, and then you find out she's actually the villain at the end.
That's quite a character shift there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun.
And you mentioned, the cost of putting these things together. So the good thing is
Yeah.
that your fans can now support you because you do have a Patreon.
Yeah.
So we'll put that link up on the screen, and you have
Yeah,
several
thank you.
levels people can do.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of the things I've been doing for my Patreon is doing a monthly journal entry. So just sharing like what I'm doing songwriting wise.
Nice.
So I mean, some of these songs might not end up on the record,
Yeah,
but maybe some of them will. And I hope that as I keep creating songs and doing my Patreon, maybe I will have my fans kind of help me decide which one of those songs should end up on the record.
that's super cool because then they can decide what they want to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Or see which ones to like expand with not just the voice. Yeah.
So before we end up, I want to go over. So you created the largest, most active
Yeah.
classical crossover group on Facebook, and I know at times it must feel like it takes over your life, right, and
Yeah.
overshadows things. But tell us a little bit about that because you've been such a great supporter to so many artists. So tell us about your group.
Yeah. So, it's kind of funny. So, like I mentioned, I've been really enjoying taking marketing courses and doing
Mhm.
it for 4 or 5 years. And it's actually music related. So it's not like college courses, but it's like related to music. And it's called The Savvy Musician. If any other musicians want to check it out, it's amazing. I've learned so much. So basically, when I first had my first single, I posted it on, I think, one of the classical crossover groups. And I was just thinking, this didn't go as far as I wanted it to.
Mhm.
And I noticed that a lot of artists would post stuff and it just wouldn't go anywhere. And I'd be like, that's so sad because you're so amazing. Like, why is this not working? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to experiment. So I asked a question in one of the groups and I got a ton of responses. And I'm like, okay, it's the engagement. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to create a classical crossover group, and my goal is to make it the biggest group with the most engagement. So that was the goal for the group in the first year. That was my goal because I think the biggest group was, I think, what was it, 1,200? Yeah, I think it was 1,200. So then I decided to take all my knowledge from these courses and just apply it. So I first reached out to some of the biggest supporters of crossover music, like Celia. Shout out to you, Celia. She's an amazing singer. Go check her out. And then I reached out to artists, which was so scary. Like, hello, who I really, really admired. And that was really scary for me because I'm like, oh, you don't know me, but I'm trying to create this group. Can you help me, like, create? And then I also invited a ton of my fans to
Mhm.
join the group. And I think that's a big thing is Facebook lets you invite people from your music group. And so I think a lot of them came from that. And then by getting more and more artists to join, I think it really created a community, which is what I was looking for. And then you're right, in order to get a ton of engagement, you have to like, comment, and share. So I was like always liking people's posts and always commenting on people's posts, which takes a lot of time.
Yep.
And then also, you also want to be genuine when you're like commenting and stuff. So I feel like, that's something that I really took into consideration and made sure that whatever I said is what I truly felt about the artist. And then I would share other people's music a lot trying to get more and more engagement. But I think we've gotten to the point now. So by the end of the first year, we ended up with, I think, over 1,200 people, which was amazing. And we ended up with the highest engagement. I mean, sometimes those posts go crazy and go over like over 100 likes
Yeah.
sometimes, which is crazy, which is awesome. So that's the goal, is to just raise awareness of crossover, and so more and more people will find it. And not only that, but I think it's because we're now online more, I think it helps artists to be discovered on those type of groups too.
Oh,
Sorry, my
absolutely.
cat is
So I'm laughing.
begging to be picked up. Say hi, Mel.
She wants another close up now. No, I agree. Your group is fabulous. You always have like really supportive people there. Um, but then it's also important that, so I'm glad we had this chance to have a chat too, to remind people that in addition to the group, you also are a musician,
Yeah.
and you're putting out new music. You've got lots of music for them to enjoy. So this has been so fun chatting with you, Julie.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. And then next year, you and I will be doing another collaboration concert. So
Yes, I'm so excited. I'm probably jumped the gun a little bit because I'm like, who can I invite? And of course, I'm just thinking of my friends Rachel and Wendy and Katrina. So,
we'll have a lot of fun. And you'll also be at our fall concert. So, guys, stay tuned for that. She's recorded a beautiful song, one of my favorites from her album.
oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah, stay tuned and please join Julie's Patreon. Go ahead and stream the support for all our artists
Yeah, that would
there.
be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Say bye, Mel.
Bye, Melody.
Bye bye.